Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Hope you're all good. Hands. Today we draw hands. For those of you who have access to the reference, we can look at a few of those images as we go. Let's talk about a couple of large ideas though. Let me turn the music down a bit. There we go. Okay. When we're looking at the hand, a couple of things I want you to observe. There we go. Look at where the knuckles sit on the palm side of the hand. So I think, you know, it's very easy to kind of not even really think about this, but the knuckles are sitting across here, right? There's a tendency to think that they sit higher up here, but if you actually look at your hand, you turn it like that, you can see, there we go, that the knuckle line sits where the pad of the hand is. Why is that useful? It gives the illusion that the palm is larger than the front side of the hand, if that makes sense. We want to be looking for some large shapes. This coming through here, and then the thumb. Now the thumb, I kind of like to treat as a separate idea. So when you're drawing, especially if you guys, for those of you who are new to this, when you're drawing, find create an imaginary line between the wrist and the knuckle and kind of take the thumb out of the equation altogether, at least when you're looking for the first large shape, because we're looking for this shape first, right? Then you can add the arch and the meat of the thumb, if that makes sense, the anatomy of the thumb. So whenever I'm drawing, because there's a tendency, because of, you know, we start looking at this, but when you look at where this is here, this crease is in relationship to the wrist, it's quite a ways out. It's much more useful to kind of just think in these terms. Then we can be thinking almost like a box, right? Then we can add on this fella. Another thing to keep in mind is we do want to be thinking about the hand generally as a box, right? So look at the angle. Like if we imagine, if you just like remove the fingers, I'm going to draw this for you guys in a second. If you actually look at your own hand and you look at where the knuckles are, and then when you look at where the crease of where the fingers meet the main body of the hand, there's an angle to the front of this box. Kind of, well, sorry, I'm doing everything backwards on camera. Kind of coming from here and coming down this way, right? It's a useful thing to look for. So when I'm drawing that as just a simple idea, I'm thinking about the box first, right? Then I'm thinking about the front end of that box, almost like this. This is slightly, something like that, right? And then the wrist coming down this way. So the fingers are attaching to this plane, coming across here, if that makes sense. And then the thumb coming out like so. Okay. Try and think of your hand initially as kind of like a mitten, if that makes sense for the pose. And remember, we've talked a lot about when figure drawing that we're sorry, I need to just get into the groove here. You know, we might see a pose like this, and I've talked about putting the fingers together like this, grouping them. I think there's a place for that even when we're doing hand studies, but I would also say, in saying that, because we're focusing on the hand, if the fingers are separated like this, for example, you know, you can create the separations as you see them. You could put those two together, but you know, you'll very likely see something like that, and you can make a judgment call on how you want to treat that, okay? So we've got a few different hands here. We've got some male and female hands. I'm going to start with the female hand. Not that female hands are inherently easier or for any other reason than I like this pose. And so it seemed like a good one to start with. As I said, you've got the reference. Oh yeah, just one other thing. We should just very quickly, sorry. We've got two bones running down the forearm, the radius and the ulnar, right? If you put your hand, if you do what I'm doing here and you just do this and you put your fingers under here and you rotate, you'll notice that that ulnar doesn't really move. It rotates very, very slightly. It's the radius bone that rotates around, right? So they kind of cross over each other. They almost do this kind of thing, right? That's why it's called the radius bone. It goes around the radius. So that's something to keep in mind. And the radius is actually the bone that has the most mass down here. So as you can see, that's why we get the whole kind of wrist coming across in that way. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll discuss it more, but I just want you to be aware of that because it can get complex with forearm muscles, with the flexors and extensors when they're crossing over like that. And in our natural state, when our hand is just down by our side, I think it's roughly about a 50% crossover, which is kind of interesting. Okay, let's draw. Yes, the stream will be saved. All right. Yeah, welcome new members. For those of you who are new members and you're not sure where to find the reference, if you go to the community chat, you will find a link there for to the reference that's hosted on my website. Okay. All right, first pose. I think we're probably going to want to take at least 15 minutes. Oh yeah, one other thing, as I've mentioned many times, I'm trying to think of the fingers more as kind of boxes, elongated boxes, than as cylinders. When we start off thinking of them as cylinders, there is a tendency for them to get quite banana-like. Whereas if we start with boxes, they'll soften out and hopefully get you where you need to go. Okay. So I'm going to try and find the ridge, the ridge of the knuckle line, coming up to the apex, the high point, which is about here, coming across. Just find the mass of the hand. Oh, let me start the clock. Not that it really matters, but. Coming down something like that. You have a turn here. The wrist is very box-like, down towards where it attaches to the hand. And obviously as then the flexor and extensor muscles get incorporated, it kind of rounds out in here, right? And then gets quite box-like again at the elbow. So I'm just going to find very loosely where my wrist is, somewhere in there, and you can see that there's that kind of separation. There's also, because of the anatomy and all the business that's going on with the anatomy, there's kind of, just coming off the wrist, right in here, there's kind of a raised section to the forearm, ever so slightly. So if we had a center line, just doing something like that. right, and then into a straighter plane. Okay. Look at the way that the index finger comes straight off this idea, coming up this way, right? That gives us a chance to bring in rhythm. It's not always going to be doing that, but just thinking about these are some really loose terms right now. And I will probably shift these things around us a little bit. So just coming up, I'm actually going to pull up to about here with my knuckle line. So this becomes that front plane that we were talking about that's on an angle. Then we've got the rhythm coming in here too. And now I'll think about my thumb. So, as you can see, that idea really starts very close to the wrist, kind of coming up this way. Something like so. Okay, I'm going to find, I like to, for the knuckles, actually because of the way that the tendons and the bone structure is, it's kind of useful to think of these almost like triangles. Right, and we can see the ligament then coming this way. You can see when it gets to this part here how it softens out. There's actually a strap coming around the wrist, I believe here, which is kind of keeping everything together. You can see the pinky knuckle is a lot less pronounced than the others. And then you can even use that kind of triangle idea up here too. There's a real good sense of that box-like structure with the pinky. Kind of really represents, you can even see how the light hits this part of the form here and then it drops off. Oh yeah, one other thing, at the risk of stating the obvious, look at the way the thumb, really when my hand is relaxed, look at the way my thumbnail is really on the side of the form. If you draw that up here to be in line with these, you can imagine how it's going to look odd. The thumb really does kind of sit on the side of the form, right? So something to keep in mind. I know it might be like, yeah, no kidding, but can't hurt to discuss it. Excuse me. And it's also interesting how when you get to a side view, you really get much more of a sense of kind of like rounded pads here, 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 right? And just obviously keep in mind where they sit in relationship to the joint, right? and here. Yeah, hey Lulu. Well, if you look at where the thumb is, Camille, what about the length of the thumb? This is really about just kind of using observational skills. Where is it? How long should it be? Well, I think what's really important is to think how long is it in relationship to, say, where the knuckle line is and where the crease of the fingers. So when I'm measuring here, I'm kind of like, you know, imagine the pose is something like that, right? Just give or take. I think her index fingers are quite a lot longer than mine. But look at where the tip of her thumb is and draw an imaginary arch coming across this way. And you can see that if I just drew across this way, and we look at this second kind of plane here, right, which is essentially this part of the hand. If I draw an imaginary line across, my thumb length is actually probably about there. Okay. Think of this kind of as a mass, almost coming like this, right? Coming down this way. So Lisa says, my thumb goes to the middle joint of my index finger. Yeah, you see, mine doesn't. If I just put my hand down here, can you see? If we were using this as our middle joint, and we're using this as my knuckle line, my thumb comes right to about here, right? And this is the thing, you know, the proportion of people's fingers does differ from person to person. So you can use your own hand as a very, you know, quick kind of guide, but ultimately you really want to kind of be checking the model, double checking, and just making sure that you're on point. Also, you know, we are dealing with perspective, and foreshortening. So there's a number of things that we need to be mindful of while we're drawing the hand. Look at the way we get this kind of where the connection point of the finger is. It's really kind of interesting, kind of look, beware of the shapes. The middle finger tends to really emphasize this kind of triangular effect pretty much more than any other finger. So this finger is sitting out a little bit. That's wrong. Should be in. My proportions are off. Sitting about there. I'll come back to that. We'll have to fix a few things here and there. I really pulled that finger in. Feels a bit better. Angst and Giggles, great name. When I draw palms, I feel like I'm drawing a compilation of chicken nuggets. This is looking amazing, thank you. Yeah, well, look, when we get to, we're going to be drawing a number of angles today, so we will address those things. Not really sure what I want to do with the lighting on this one. I'm not sure I'm going to do much. Because the lighting on the model, we've got 2 even light sources. And I don't really want to do that. Yeah, I might just leave this as a diagrammatical study. I think we've got better drawings for, you know, pushing. Yeah, not thrilled with this. Been a while since I drew hands. There was no practice run. Yeah, it's a bit sloppy. Anyway, we will get back into the groove. I feel like this could all be a little bit more dynamic. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on because that's almost 20 minutes already. Nah, not great at all. I was wondering about the length of the middle finger. Is it shorter than the index finger due to the foreshortening? That, in this case, Lisa, absolutely. It is interesting though, if you look at a lot of different hands, you know, there's a whole science behind the lengths of people's fingers, right? So yeah, I would say what you want to do is you want to look at a lot of different hands. Okay, let's move on. Hands are hard. When I went to see the Sargent exhibit in Boston in January, I noticed hands were expressive, but they certainly were not all perfect. Yeah, look, it's that's gonna happen, right? When we were drawing the Michelangelo master copies the other day, it was interesting to see his approach too to certain things and how, you know, you're making certain compromises. Okay, so with this next pose, now we're getting into something that has a bit more dimension. So let's see what we can do here. Oh, should restart the clock. Hemant, how are you doing? Okay. I'm going to find the large ideas first, volume-wise. So from the knuckle of the middle finger, coming down to the wrist, it's about there. Now this middle finger is kind of going up this way, right, and doing this. But I'm more concerned about this overall volume, right? This, the mass. This mass going through here. Index finger is connecting there. And then it's doing something like this, right? Like this, if we remove the thumb and we use that concept of just working from here to the wrist, right, as a straight line, we've got this kind of idea. Then we've got the mass of the thumb sitting in here. And that's coming through up here. We've got that index finger sitting here. Middle finger. This model's got very long fingers. She'd probably make a great pianist or guitarist, something like that. And if you look at the knuckle of the third finger, right, sitting right about here, just in this region here, and look at where, if we come down the pinky, the knuckle is about here, but the middle knuckle is pretty much right about here. Think about this as I said, as a box sitting there. When I did that page of hand studies that you saw at the beginning of the live stream, I did all of those in graphite because I find that it really is a case of, when I'm drawing something that's so technical, let's say, there is an advantage to working with graphite, because charcoal tends to get just so noisy so quickly. especially this super soft charcoal. It's probably not the smartest thing to be doing these with. For the studies, well, just generally, my pencil of choice for years now has been the Tombow Mono. I think I have one here. If I can grab it without my microphone coming off. Yeah, I think I showed you this before. Obviously, this one is kind of beat up, but can you see that? Sorry, the light's really bad. Yeah, Tombow Mono. So for my money, it's the best graphite pencil I've worked with. Prefer it to their Blackwing, which I'm not a huge fan of personally, to be honest. I know people rave about them, but they just don't quite do it for me. And I think the erasers on them suck. Look at the way this fat pad of the index finger kind of comes this way to here, right? And you can look at the way that there's that mass sitting there, right? (2B or 4B? Well, the one I just showed you is a 5. I like to use the whole range, Margot. I think it'll depend on what type of paper you're on, how heavy your hand is. There's a number of things to consider. But if you're kind of curious, you want to try a couple, maybe get a 2B and a 4B or a 3B and a 6B. You know, somewhere around that. Forget the HB. HBs are useless to us. All the H's are just, you know, unless we're drawing technical drawings, we've no use for H's in my mind. Staedtler are good. Yeah, Staedtler are a solid pencil. The Luminograph are very nice. I like the Luminograph. There's something about the Tombow that just, I don't know, just resonates. got this knuckle type shape there. To actually have the thumb. Don't want to forget that. And the thumb is sitting in here. Mark Watson asks, Richard, how do you ship your newsprint drawings? Good question, Mark. What I do is I put them in a tube. You don't need to see the tubes. Tubes are right there. I put them in a tube with a sheet of newsprint on either side of the drawing. And then what I do is I completely tape the entire tube so that it's for all intents and purposes, it's watertight. You know, I don't know if I'd want to submerge it for any length of time underwater, if you know what I mean. But the reason being that, you know, the newsprint is potentially sensitive to moisture. So yeah, they get completely sealed. So that's how I ship. And so far, so good. Seems to be working. It might be a tiny bit overkill, but I'd rather err on the side of caution, if you know what I mean. Ah. Okay. This knuckle is bad. Ah, there we go. First one gone. I really should stop pressing so hard. Now you can see, just get a glimpse here of the meat of the palm, right where the knuckle line is here. We can see that just revealing itself in here. And then coming around the form here. And that's gone too now. All right, doing well. I have both the Tombow and the Statler, says Jeffrey. Tombow wins. Hey, Jeffrey. Just have a better feel. It's right. Something about them. It's that thing that it's really hard. You can't just kind of put your finger on it. Why? They feel superior. They just do. Yeah, Margot, it's all down to the perfect pencil. We all know that. I bought a set of Tombow on your recommendation. and have been amazed at how much better they are than the 100 other pencils in my kit. Thanks for the reco, Richard. See that, Tina? You're very welcome. Glad to hear it. I'm glad that you like them. Yeah. You look, here's the thing with the Tombow, you're just not going to go wrong with them, right? You're not going to buy the pencil, use it and go, that's a horrible experience. It's just not going to happen. Hey, drawing, says Dean. Hey, Richard, says Dean. My first live drawing class is today and I'm feeling kind of nervous. I've only been drawing since the beginning of the year. Any advice to help quell my nerves? Yeah, get there. Well, look, you're probably going to be a bit nervous, although I would say that you've got nothing to be nervous about. I would say the only advice I can really give is get there early and try and get a decent seat. Try and get something roughly that feels like it will be center, because regardless, generally speaking, well, not regardless, sometimes there are exceptions to this, but generally a model will pick what they think is the front of the room. And if you can be in the front of the room, that's the angle that they'll generally also pose to, if that makes sense. Now, there's a lot of exceptions and what ifs to what I'm saying, but you do want to try and get a good seat, right? Because there's nothing, especially if you're new to it, what's going to really trip you up is having, if you're like, let's say it's a semicircle, right? And you're sitting on one end of the semicircle, it's a very good chance you're going to get a lot of tricky foreshortening poses to deal with. So that would be my only advice. My advice would be go along and enjoy it. And don't worry about what you're doing or what other people are doing. I know it's easier said than done, but just try and focus on your own work and oh yeah, I do actually have one more bit of advice for you. Don't chase the pose. And some of you know what I mean by that already, but what it means is basically, right, a model might start up here and it's a 15-minute pose, and this is going to be an exaggeration, but the model might start up here, and by the 5th minute they're relaxing, and then by the 10th minute they're down here, and by the 15th minute, they're kind of like down here somewhere. There's a tendency to want to chase it, to correct your drawing, to account for the fact that they've relaxed. I would resist that temptation. Whatever your first kind of large statement of position is for the model, I would stick with that and then just use the model kind of as a reference generally, but let the conversation be between you and the drawing. Don't get hypnotized into chasing the model's movement, okay, in that way. Hope that makes sense. Stop at pub before going to class. Go to the pub after the class. That would be my advice. Get coffee before the class. Go to the pub after. Richard, you forget to tell next story. I haven't forgotten, Hemant. I'll tell it in a few minutes. Maybe during the next drawing, I've got a story for you. I actually thought about, after you asked that in the last session, I was like, what story would they like to hear? I think I've got a story that you'll enjoy. So, yeah, once again, another tricky lighting scenario. Look, but one thing that's nice about it is the core shadows really give you a sense of this box-like form that we discussed. Jeffrey's insisting on getting alcohol into before the session, I see. do what you need to do. That's all I'm going to say. Jaeger says, I run a figure drawing group here and recently moved the stage to the center of the room with the artists all around. It made all the difference. It makes the model thinking front versus back of the room. You know, yeah, like, I think there's the center is good. I think if you've got the real estate, you see, the problem is a lot of rooms just simply, it's not viable to do that, you know. But yeah, if you've got the space, yeah, because as Jaeger's saying, the model will generally speaking, will bias a particular, what they think is the front of the room. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just ignore the light coming from our right, if that makes sense. So my light source is going to be coming from this direction. And hopefully I won't regret that decision. And we're at 22 minutes of this one. Oof. All right, let's just a little bit of blend, and then we'll move on. Yeah, the charcoal feels a little too clumsy for this exercise. Anyway, I don't have a lot of choice. I'm not happy with that either, to be honest. Anyway, it is what it is. We will move on. Hopefully you're getting something out of this process regardless. But yeah. 2 out of 2 I'm not very happy with. How do you find these playlists, says Hemanth? Hemanth, when you listen long enough, you'll realize it's the same playlist over and over again. I do mix it up a little bit, but yeah, you know, this is an ongoing issue, the music on this stream. All right, let's have a look at the third pose. Ooh, okay. Now we're moving to a male, basically knuckles, right? Knuckles, very muscular arm, what looks like a very muscular hand. Here's something that's kind of interesting, and this actually applies to the whole body, but you do notice it with the hands, is with some small deviation from person to person, even the veins take a very the vein patterns are the same, generally speaking, from person to person. You do get some changes, but there are large ideas, and I forget the names of them now, unfortunately. But there is names like for example, you can see on our model, you can't really see on my hand, unfortunately, but there's this arch has a name. This arch of these veins here. It's kind of interesting, especially if you're drawing anatomy a lot. The veins will actually, they can bring a lot to your drawing. They can also make things overly complicated, so you have to be very careful with them. But they do tend to have repeat the way that they're working. Refresh my brain, what chamois are you using? This isn't a chamois, Jeffrey. This is literally a grey flannel from Target. And they come in 5-packs for, I think, like $3 or something like that. I forget how much, like they're really cheap. And they're the one thing when I go to the States I try and pick up a packet of, because I just like them. Not that you can't get flannels here in England, but just one of those kickbacks from living there for so long. You get certain things you just get used to. Okay, let's start this drawing. Oh, and I'll tell you a story. Actually, I'm going to go landscape for this one. Okay. Well, today I will I'll tell you a story about how I spent. You see, the thing is, I lived in LA for over 25 years, but roughly 25 years. And I lived about a mile from all of the film studios. But even in saying that, I could literally count on one hand how many famous people I saw. Partly because I just lived a very kind of quiet life there and didn't really go out of my way to seek it. But also, LA is the kind of place, you know, it's a big place, and unless you eat in the same places as some of these celebrities, etc., you can go a long time without seeing any of them, frankly. I'm going to pull this over slightly because I want to allow a bit of real estate for the actual fist. So anyway, so what's my story about? Well, I'm going to tell you about the time that I kind of made up for not meeting famous people. I got to spend 2 hours in a one-on-one conversation with Paul McCartney. And that is my claim to fame. So how did that happen? Well, back in 2011, 2012, might be off by a year here or there around with this story, but it was around there. I art directed a kids film for a studio in LA, and it was a rather new studio. And it was actually, funnily enough, it was a Jordanian studio that were trying to make a name for themselves in LA, and they threw a lot of money at this studio. It was unfortunately short-lived because while their ambitions were very ambitious, they just didn't understand the industry enough, and it's one of those things of they hired a lot of experts which they then promptly ignored for the most part. But anyway, this studio, I art directed this feature for them, right? And then that came to an end. And then long story short, they bought the rights to a children's book that Paul McCartney wrote called High in the Clouds. Now, how did a studio like that get this story? Well, basically, I think that it had been shopped around to other studios like Pixar and Disney and those. And I think, from what I understand, is for whatever reason, it didn't fit what they wanted to do. And so no one bought it. So when this studio, this kind of fledgling studio got a chance, they bought the rights to make this film, to adapt the book into a film, etc. Now, that's all fine and well. So they hired a director to work on the movie, and the idea is, especially when you're in the very early stages of a film, you get kind of like goals, right? Like you've got to meet certain goals, like in pre-production, as you move forward. Now, for whatever reason, what we're not going to really get into is the director that they had working on the film turned out, in the minds of the management team, to not be a good fit. But there was still, in the short term, while they were looking for a new director, there were still things that needed to be, like obligations, that needed to be met on this movie, right? And one of those was to present to Paul McCartney this current state of where the movie was at, right? Now, because I was between projects for the studio, they basically, during this interim period while they were searching for a new director, they put me in charge of the film, right, just to keep things moving forward. So basically, we got to a point where we had to make a presentation to Paul McCartney to show him where we were at. And the idea was that Paul was going to come, Sir Paul was going to come to the studio, and the idea being that I would present to him the current state of affairs. So, you know, we were all kind of, you know, we were a little bit apprehensive. But anyway, we set up the conference room with all the artwork, and we put it up on the walls, right, on these big boards, and all the artwork went up. And the day came, and Mr. McCartney graced us with his presence. Now, the way that these meetings work, generally speaking, is even though that there was 6 people in the room, only one person talks, right, to the client, in this case, to Mr. McCartney, to Paul. So it was down to me to be the one that would talk to him and to explain everything, because the last thing you want is a bunch of noise in the room, or a bunch of different voices and people talking over each other and that type of thing. So yeah, Paul showed up, and I got to spend 2 hours basically with me and him talking about this film and where it was at and what our thoughts were moving forward and our plans and all the rest. And the whole time that we were in this meeting, his longtime assistant, John, I believe his name is, he recorded the whole thing on camcorder. Now, it would be my thinking that somewhere in a vault somewhere exists a recording of that meeting. But I obviously haven't seen it. And anyway, long story short, I spent 2 hours with him explaining the movie and everything that we needed to do and move forward. He was very excited about it. He loved it. As he was leaving, he gave me a big hug and thanked me and blah, blah, blah. And as he was leaving, trust me, it went through my mind to ask for a photo. And I didn't. I never started the timer on this. I decided against it. And I'm really glad I did, because from what I understand, people have asked him for autographs before in those types of situations, and he declines. Understandably so. I think it would have been probably highly unprofessional to ask for his autograph. Or not his autograph, to ask for a photo, sorry. Certainly wasn't going to ask for his autograph. So that is how I got to spend basically the best part of an afternoon talking to Mr. McCartney. And I've got to say, going into it, you know, I wasn't actually nervous at all. The reason being, in my mind, it was like, well, look, if I can talk to him, one artist to another, and I can just kind of put aside for a moment his history and who he is, and just talk to him, yeah, one artist to another, talking about an artistic kind of venture. And I've got to say, we spoke, as I said, we spoke for the best part of 2 hours. Could have even been longer, honestly. I don't remember exactly. Not once did he look at his phone. Not once was he not completely engaged in our conversation. And I remember finding that, I won't say I found it shocking. I didn't kind of think of it at the time. But afterwards, I just thought how nice that was, and how respectful he had been about the process. And frankly, you know, he was really excited. Obviously, he was going to see his film being made. So why wouldn't he be? Or his book turned into a film. But it was just an incredibly positive experience, and he really could not have been nicer or more humble and down to earth. And yeah, it's obviously, it was quite an experience. But he made it very easy, in fairness, because there was so little ego, and there was no ego. It was just two dudes talking about something. And so, yeah, there you go. There's my Paul McCartney. There's my story for today. I peaked early because I don't think I have any that really, you know. I don't think I've got more stories that come close to that. So if you're expecting something to top that next week, you're going to be sadly disappointed. But there you go. The name of the movie is High in the Clouds. Now, here's the thing. Our studio, about 6-8 months after that meeting, the studio, as I said, they made a lot of rookie mistakes, and they ended up closing, and the rights for the film got passed on to another studio. And from what I understand, that movie has been made, or is in the process of being made, by a French studio. That's the last I've heard about it. But I had nothing up to do with it beyond, because shortly after that meeting with Paul, the studio did find a director, and obviously the film was passed on over to the director, and that was that. But the studio did sadly, it didn't survive. But you know, they were the ones that kind of instigated the whole thing with Lady Gaga recording a song for it, which I believe was recorded, and I would imagine will be in the final film. I can't imagine that they wouldn't have taken that, you know, can't imagine they would have eliminated that from the process. So there you go. But really, probably the only famous person I met. When I worked at DreamWorks, I did see Brad Pitt out of the window of my office. Oh, I guess one other famous sight, but really more of a sighting than anything else, was I was one day in my office, same studio actually, just sitting in my office talking to one of the producers, and my office door bursts open, and there's a guy standing there. He goes, "Hi, I'm Stan Lee," and closes the door, and that was that. I guess he was being given a tour of the studio. Anyway, myself and the producer, we both kind of looked at each other and laughed. It was just like, okay, that was Hollywood, a Hollywood moment. And you know, I've had a few sightings here and there of famous people on the Warner Brothers lot or at DreamWorks, that type of thing, but never anyone that I could say that I met in the way that I met Paul. So there you go. I'd be lying there if I said I wouldn't mind seeing that VCR, that video recording done of the meeting. Apparently his my wife, I think it was, said that she had read that he had finally retired his assistant, which would make sense because they would have been roughly, give or take, about the same age. So it would stand to reason that he would have retired. So yeah, there you go. No, it's not out yet, Hemant, the movie. Things are complex with celebrities. To my understanding, it takes a bit of special training for those unused to it to perform professionally. Who, them? I think for them to perform professionally, Lulu, or for someone like me to perform professionally, I think it's just really case dependent. I think it depends the type of person you're dealing with. You know, when you look at someone like Paul McCartney and his upbringing and that type of thing, you know, he was brought up in a very, very down-to-earth environment where you would not have airs and graces about yourself, you know what I mean? Like working class Liverpool, no one's walking around thinking they're all that, you know? All right, let's look at these veins. How much do I want to even get into that? I'm going to just hint at them, I think. Leave it to the French to screw it up. Rick, when it comes to animation, the French know a thing or two. I could actually, maybe just as maybe an interesting fact or not, but I can tell you after 30 odd years working in animation, I would say per head, I've seen more talented French people working in the animation industry than anyone else. You know, obviously I've worked with many nationalities and that, working in animation. But the French, they take that stuff seriously, and generally in my experience, the French, I don't know what it is, maybe they got something in their water, but they're a talented bunch. Don't tell them I said that. God, we can't, you know, the ego is big enough. But no, they're a super talented group of people. So I've got a feeling the movie, in fairness, I think the movie's probably in really good hands, and I would say it will look beautiful. Obviously we can't speak to the story because, you know, but the French artists do not mess around. I think this is a very nurturing environment for art in France, from what I understand. Yeah. Where are we at? 11 minutes? No, we've gone longer. I didn't start the clock till halfway in, right? Or more. Don't want to overdo it with those veins. I did go large, Rick, with this drawing simply because it's the only way to make the charcoal manageable. Those first drawings were so dirty. And once again, it just comes down to the amount of kind of drawing that needs to be done. But yeah, had to work large on this one. I'd be working even larger if I could, to be honest. Yes, but having fun at the French's expense is always in season. Not even American, I'm having fun with it. Yeah, of course. And look, the British and the French famously seem to have a beef with each other. Because they're not as cool as us. That's just their burden to live with. They can't compete. They're too cool. Right? We'll see if there's any. That'll weed out the French people in the stream if there are any. You see, I don't think the French will even watch my stream. They're not going to watch Englishmen draw. Why would they do that? Why would they waste their time? All right, I think I'm going to leave it there. And this one. Take care, Lisa. Exactly. All right. What have we got here next? Okay, this next one. This is two hands in this shot. I was initially kind of thinking you could draw either, right? They're pretty much a mirror of each other. I'm just going to draw the one that's slightly better lit. All right, so I'm going to draw his right. But you could draw either, or you could draw both if you are really looking for extra brownie points. But you know, like for me, that would be, I don't think my brain could handle drawing both of these hands. What editing software do you use? I use DaVinci Resolve, Hemant. It's free and it's very good. All right, let's get another pencil. Yeah, I wouldn't mind something sweet right now. Okay. This is going to be a tricky one, I feel like. Let's see what happens. Oh, clock. And we're at 6:23 and we have 3 more poses. You know what, guys? What we're going to do in the interest, because I do think we should get through all 3 of these, is I think we should do 10-minute poses for each one. It's going to force us to think quickly. You see, Rick knows how to get the brownie points. Unfortunately, they're unredeemable brownie points, other than in my heart, Rick. Richard looking very handsome today. You see? It's words like that that'll get you places in life. Rick knows what's up. Okay. "10 minutes. We're going to try and stick to it because I do want to do all 3 of these. And I think it'll actually be good to just work a little bit quicker. A little bit looser. Okay. Find that bulk on top of the hand there. my knuckle line is roughly here, right? We can see that the thumb is probably about here. What is your favorite piece of drawing you've done? I have no idea. I honestly have no idea. You know what I think it is? To try and give some to try and flesh that answer out. I've done drawings. I think especially when you kind of you know, when you kind of get to a you just kind of level up. Each time you level up, there's inevitably a drawing that gives you that realization that, oh yeah, I think I'm getting somewhere here. And usually at that point in time, that is your favorite drawing, right? It's like, oh yeah, there's, whether it's a new stage of development or a breakthrough in some way, there's going to be something that you're going to go, oh yeah, this drawing does it. And then, you know, 3 months could go by and you look at that same drawing and it doesn't speak to you nearly the way it did, but it served its purpose, right? That's really the main kind of point of it. And I think that all through stages of development, you're going to have those types of drawings. And for 24 hours at least, that drawing is your favorite thing you've ever done, and you can't imagine doing something better than it. And then, you know, you wake up the next day and realize you've got to keep going. And that regardless of how good it was, it's kind of irrelevant. If that makes sense. I also don't tend to get too attached to the drawings themselves. I've got a few that I, you know, will probably hold on to, but I'm not, for me the drawing is really, the finished product is to some degree neither here nor there. I'm far more interested about the experience creating it than the final product. Because I've done some drawings which objectively weren't bad, but if I didn't actually enjoy the process or don't feel like I got something out of the process, I don't really care. If that makes sense. I'm far more interested in the experience than the final result. Well, one thing I've definitely taken away from today's session is how much I need to get back into drawing hands. I don't think I've felt so, like I felt like far more in my comfort zone with the feet somehow. I haven't done hands and just focused on hands in and age. And as I said, I probably should have done a little bit of prep for today. Anyway, I think what it tells me is that we're going to probably be doing hand sessions quite a bit more often. So for no other reason, I can get better at them. You see, when you're drawing the full figure, you get so used to drawing like a shorthand version of these things without fleshing it out. And you kind of forget. It's like, oh yeah, this is difficult. Thank you so much. Rolling Stones rule. You know, funnily enough, Rick, we had a character in that, the film I was talking about earlier, we did have a character that was very much based on Keith Richards. And when I mentioned that to Paul, he came up with some very funny anecdote about Keith Richards. I forget what it was, but I think he got a kick out of it. I think they're all friends, really, for the most part. Share so much history. Ah, Constantaneous. Hey. Well, if you enjoy drawing feet, there's a rather enthusiastic audience that'd be interested in women's feet specifically. Yeah, apparently that's a thing, right? Can't say. I know you're going to say, yeah, well, you would say that, but never really got the whole foot fetish thing. Just don't dislike feet. Like feet just fine. Like drawing feet. But that's kind of where it ends, to be honest. Oh, I've screwed this up awfully. This was a hard hand. There is like obviously the way that the distortion we've got in the fingers due to his fingers on his face the way they are is definitely compounding the issue here with how these fingers just look an absolute mess, because they're without the context of the face. I really should have thought about that. And they just kind of look weird sitting all alone. You know what, I'm just going to leave it. Oh, we're at 14 minutes and I said 10, didn't I? Look at that as a convenient bailout. Yes, let's move on, because I'm hating my drawing. And certainly any excuse to not give it any more time is just fine with me. But I think we're going to come back and do hands on the reg for a while. We'll still continue with that. Doing knees next Monday, right? We'll do the regular session on Thursday. Next Monday will be knees. But you never know. I think we're going to be coming back to hands sooner rather than later, because this is an abomination. Okay. You see, I haven't captured it at all. The deceptive bend in the finger joints near the knuckles is what throws this one off. Yeah, and also, you know, hands generally, in my experience, let's just say we got, you know, something like this. The fingers tend to kind of curve in naturally anyway, right? Something like this. So what we're seeing, pinky would be smaller obviously down here. What we're seeing there with that index finger, this one, is we're seeing this lovely kind of curve that's going in this way. And we're kind of seeing it here very subtly. But I haven't captured any of that. What I've drawn is just a bunch of stupid lines. Very disappointed with that. All right, next pose. All right, 10. Has to be a 10. Did you get so angry you teared your art to pieces? Oh, I've torn many a drawing in half a month. These ones will probably get torn in half and thrown in the fire. But I don't get angry about it. I very kind of, in the moment, just kind of frustrated that it didn't work well. But, you know, angry is a word that I wouldn't use lightly, if you know what I mean. I also become very comfortable to some degree or another just with the fact that bad drawings happen every now and then. And you move on. Okay. Did any of you see that documentary series that was on TV a while back about the Beatles, how they created their music? Are you talking about the one on Apple Music, or on Apple Music, on Apple TV? It was the Peter Jackson four-parter, right? It was like 6 hours or something, 6-7 hours. And he restored all the footage and looked like you were back in the day. If that's the one you're referring to, which I'm guessing it is, yes, I saw it and loved it, and I watched all of it. And apparently they're coming out with more, allegedly. All right, let's Let's restart the clock. Quick sip of tea. I stuck a nose and eyebrow underneath my hand and it really helped it. I'm sure it does help Margot, but my hand was just literally not worth it. Okay, come on, I need to redeem myself here. Penny or Pam? Pam wasn't in the running. Yeah, still Penny. Still not crazy about it for her name. Still could change. But we're going with it for now, although I rarely call her it. Don't know why I'm not crazy about it. Just, yeah, we'll see. But Penny is doing great. Little terror. You know, I've thought already, Lulu, the Mrs. Moneypenny thing, I've already been trying to think of ways to kind of come to terms with it like that. I generally just refer to her as P when I'm texting about her or something like that. P is doing this or P is doing that. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. I've got a super awkward finger here. Yeah. Five minutes already. If you call Puppy Penny till next week, it'll be stored as muscle memory, I guess. Well, she doesn't seem to. She responds to everything, which maybe isn't necessarily a good thing on some level, but it certainly, I don't think it'll be stored in her muscle memory at that point. To say, I'm looking forward to kind of getting reacquainted with and more comfortable with the hand drawing. So I'm doing by being lazy. Too much figure and not enough focus on zooming in on things. Everything has been so figure heavy for a long time now. You guys have been here, you've seen it. So I'm really glad for this opportunity to mix things up and get back to basics with a few things. We can work through these ideas together, I guess. You see, that's wrong. This is over here. Can't draw today. Can't draw hands anyway. What am I doing? See, this is what happens when I draw without process and start winging it. I know better. So I saw that sequel to Dune yesterday. Yeah, it's all right. I think maybe I realised that I'm not as into Dune as I thought I was. Like, obviously it looks superb. And there's a lot about it that's very interesting. But I don't know, it didn't quite... You know what it is with that film? It takes itself so bloody seriously. I know that it's based on the book, and blah, 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 but, like, something. Let us come up for air, just once an hour. Just let's come up for air. Like, the couple of times Javier Bardem gets to say something that isn't just super serious is so refreshing, but he only does it like a couple of times. And then it's just back to this, like, serious. And that's fine. I know it's a serious movie and all the rest, but oh God, it's taking itself so, it's treating itself so preciously. I wish it would just lighten up a little, come up for air. Can't do that for 3 hours, you know? It's like the longest film I've ever bloody seen, and it just, wrecked my head. It's like, just stop for a minute. And I think it could have a little bit more fun with itself without losing the tone or the feeling of the book or whatever. And I know the people that are really into Dune like us probably really offended, but good Lord. No amount of sandworms are going to keep me interested in that situation. Also, I think the sandworms didn't look as good as I thought they could, especially the long shots. They feel like could have been better, if I'm honest. Also, this whole riding them thing, that's all fine, but when they start riding them in huge groups, and it's like, how are you getting off the worms? Can we talk about that just for 1 second? You're riding these things, they're going 500 miles an hour, it seems, through the desert. How are you getting off? Nah, we won't show that part. It's like, come on, it's enough. Like you have a little step ladder next to the worm so you can get off and walk down. It's like, come on, enough nonsense. And enough nonsense with me in this wretched drawing. Good Lord, they've gone, you know, the drawings have gone from bad to worse. This is now retrieving. This might be the worst session I've done in a long time. A villain origin story, 2K. Are we not, like, we've done 2 3-hour movies. An origin story would supposition that this is going to be the origin of something bigger. It can't be all origin. And the villains, okay, let's talk about Dave Bautista, is that how you pronounce it? What's with his character suddenly becoming so cowardly? Come on. The way that he freaks out and he runs back onto his ship like a coward. You can't build him up in the first film to be like the meanest badass around, and then suddenly he's confronted with an actual fight and he hightails back to his ship. And then the way that he gets killed? Like, really? I am not even buying that stuff for a second. It's like you have completely lost my trust by making him such a cowardly character so quickly. with no kind of build up on why, or the backstory on why that might even be the case. No, not buying it. Dave's arc was super disappointing, totally agree. Yeah, like, well, just beyond disappointing, ridiculous. Like, you lose all credibility in my mind, like, if you're going to make your villain that easily destroyed. Like, the Baron, okay, like, the Baron kind of had it coming, and as for that sidekick of his, what, the cousin or whatever it was, like, okay, it was fine, not great. Thought the character design could have been stronger on that, considering how strong the character design was on the rest of the film. But yeah, come on, that was ridiculous. Paul is the baddie. Yeah, no, I get that, but so's then everyone's a baddie. You can't do that. And I know I've got a feeling that the girl is going to be that's going to be, I'm guessing, the battle in the third one. But you can't just have all baddies, right? Especially when the baddie is being built up to be the hero for 6 hours of film. You've got to, like, I'm not buying what they're selling. To me, this is too many holes. And then this really bothered me. Spoiler alert, by the way. He takes off in the ship to go and take on all the houses. He's got like the puniest armada of ships. There's like five, six of those. I know they're big spacecraft, but 5 or 6 of them, and he doesn't necessarily have an army to fill them. And he's going to go take on the whole universe? Stop with that nonsense. He's not doing anything of the sort. Anyway. All right. You can have all baddies, but for that to occur, the writing also needs to be bad. Yeah, I know, the book's old. Look, I think spoilers within reason, but I didn't care. Do you like Blade Runner 2016 or the old ones? Thank you, Marco. I think that the new Blade Runner film is fine, but I don't think it doesn't feel like a continuation or a part of the original canon to me. By the way, guys, we're going to try and keep this relatively quick, maximum 10 minutes, but if I get done sooner, I'm going to call it. There we go. I think it's a fine film, like, to stand in its own right, but it doesn't feel like part of the first Blade Runner at all. And then that was a situation where I think Dave Bautista's character should have been kept alive. That whole world looked really interesting, and then we spent 5 minutes there, and this is a very, very tricky hand. There's a lot going on. I just looked it up. I do like that little Timothy Chalamet. Little. Yeah, he's all right. He's all right. Like, he's fine. Serviceable job he does. I don't think he's the next greatest thing the way everyone proclaims he is, but he's fine. Anyway, there's a new Alien film coming to disappoint me, to a cinema near me in the fall. I hope it's good. I'm kind of not holding my breath, but you never know. This is one of those hand poses that even if you do somehow draw it perfectly, it's going to probably still look a bit weird and wrong. You know what I mean? Well, what have we learnt today? I can't draw hands, apparently. I feel like I used to be able to draw hands. Yeah, this is just diabolique, as the French wouldn't say. Yeah, well, you know, this is why one of the reasons I picked this pose was not that there was any aspiration to be able to draw it well, because I kind of knew I was setting up for a challenge, to put it lightly, with this one. But it's really to show, you know, the incredible dexterity and range that the hand has, far more, in my opinion, than the foot, which is, you know, in relative terms, is really a static structure. You know, we were talking about which is easier the other day, and you could make an argument, well, you know, you look at your hands a lot more, but the hand is the fact that the hand can do this and it can do a closed fist really kind of says it all, right? Well, for Thursday, I'm going to pick some nice, easy poses. So I lick my wounds. Because this has been atrocious. Anyway, it is what it is. This hand is coming from, finger is coming from here actually. All right. Okay, it serves me right for picking the poses I picked. At least you guys can blame me. I have no one to blame other than me. All right, we're going to come back to, yeah, you say, why am I even bothering at this point? Like, really? We're going to come back to hands in a few weeks. And maybe easier hands. Some simple hand poses that I have maybe stand a chance of being able to do something with. Wow, I'm literally making it worse with each stroke. Okay, I'm stopping. This is enough. Enough, enough, enough. This is where I quickly change camera. Okay. Well, there you go. What have we learnt? We've learnt that we need to practice hands. And I think that's okay. Because it just means that there's something to practice, something to improve on, and to get back in touch with, and really apologize for what I did today. I've literally, well, maybe the closed fist one is okay. It's okay. Margot, please, that's just not true, but I appreciate it. I do appreciate the support, but I've done atrociously today. Okay, here's what it is. The closed fist one. I'll take that one as something, but it's closed fist, like, come on. Anyway, such is life. So, Thursday, full figure drawing, probably a bloke. Here's the problem. One of the issues I have right now is I feel like I'm in it to some degree with female models too. I feel like I'm just really struggling to come up with models that we haven't drawn their body types 100 times before. I did go online, I've been looking, obviously, you know, older models, heavier set model, body, like models that haven't spent all day, every day in the gym. Those are the types of people I want to draw. Unfortunately, I'm having a really hard time finding model packs that we can use in the stream that check some of those boxes. So it's a problem. It's a problem. You know, we've been doing this a long time and we've drawn a lot of models, but if I'm honest, I think a lot of them fall into a particular type of body type, which is essentially athletic-ish to some degree or another. So I need to give this some serious thought. Regardless, we will be back on Thursday. That much I do know. But yeah, wish there was a model that, or some models that, you know, they're around us, people everywhere, interesting body shapes, but just not available as model packs, unfortunately. Anyway, guys, it's been interesting. I'll see you all on Thursday. All right, I'm out of here. You get out of here. And hit the like button if you wouldn't mind, or even the dislike, it doesn't really matter. Just hit something on your way out. All right, cheers, bye.